That nagging feeling, that sense there's just got to be more than what we see and touch. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack that restless urge.
Okay.
Because that really is the Faustian spirit we're talking about, isn't it? That deep human thing, chafing against limits.
It really is. And it's fascinating, this yearning, this feeling that something's just out of reach.
Oh.
It's not new. Our sources show this story echoing way, way back.
Right.
Think for a second about your own maybe secret hopes, like maybe a flicker of curiosity about what happens after we die. Or that really deep desire to just get what consciousness is all about, wishing we could touch the infinite, even for a moment.
Exactly. And that's pretty much the core of what we want to do in this deep dive. Really get into the story of Faust.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's not just some dusty old tale. It's almost like a map.
Yeah.
A map of your own inner world, right? Your biggest dreams kind of bump up against your biggest fears.
Some people have even called it the most dangerous myth ever, which is quite a statement.
It really is.
Yeah.
So understanding Faust, it can actually shed light on those times when, the everyday world just feels too small for what you aspire to.
Absolutely. And as our sources remind us, Goethe, in his epic Faust, he gives Mephistopheles those incredible lines.
Oh, yeah.
I am part of the part that once was everything. Part of the darkness which gave birth to light. Really evocative.
It is. And here's where it gets really profound, I think. Because Faust's bargain, that deal with Mephistopheles, that massive trade-off, it's like a mirror for the deals we make inside ourselves all the time.
The internal negotiation.
Yeah. That push and pull, right?
Yeah.
Between playing it safe and taking a risk, between just accepting things and rebelling, between the finite and the infinite. His journey, it charts that exact territory. Those moments we all have with mysteries that kind of scare us but also pull us in.
So what's really at the heart of this Faustian bargain then? What does it represent?
Good question.
Well, fundamentally, it's about that temptation, isn't it? Humanity's temptation to trade things that last values, maybe your soul, for immediate power, immediate knowledge.
Yeah. Faust basically wagered his soul for, every limitless understanding, all the earthly pleasures.
And that speaks to something really fundamental in us, that desire to overcome our limits, even if the cost, terrible.
And that's why the word Faustian hits so hard, right? It's become shorthand for any deal where we give up something truly valuable for something shiny and tempting right now, but maybe not last.
Exactly. It's a drama that plays out not just in myths, but, deep inside us whenever we face that kind of choice.
Our sources also bring up that great quote from Goethe, kind of sets the scene for this whole knowledge quest.
Oh, the one about truth.
Yeah. Truth is a torch, but a tremendous one. That is why we hurry past it, shielding our eyes, indeed in fear of getting burned.
That really captures it. The sheer power, maybe even the danger of the kind of knowledge Faust is after. It can be overwhelming.
Okay, so to really get a grip on this whole Faustian impulse, it feels like we need to go back further, right? Look at some older stories that have the same kind of drive.
Definitely. It's amazing how these core human desires pop up again and again across totally different times and places.
So where do we see it first?
Our sources point straight to the Epic of Gilgamesh. That's a really early, really powerful.
Okay.
So after his best friend Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh is just consumed by the fear of death, his own mortality.
Right.
So he goes on this massive quest for immortality, journeys to the ends of the earth, basically, looking for the secret to eternal life.
And does he find it?
He finds Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Great Flood, but Utnapishtim gives him some pretty stark news. He says, basically, the life you're looking for, you'll never find it. When the gods made humans, they gave them death. They kept life for themselves.
Wow, that boundary again, between what humans can know and what's reserved for the gods. That sounds very familiar.
Doesn't it?
It's like Gilgamesh and Faust are both pushing against that same fundamental limit, wanting knowledge or power that's not supposed to be theirs, and both kind of face the music for it.
Precisely. It's like this drive has been baked into our stories from the absolute beginning.
So what else? Any other ancient echoes?
Well, there's the archetype of the light bringer, Lucifer.
Ah.
His name literally means light bearer or morning star. And that famous line from Isaiah, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? It paints him as this celestial being who dared to challenge God.
Okay.
But what's really interesting is that in the medieval grimoires, those magic books we'll get into later, Lucifer wasn't always seen as just this evil demon. Sometimes he was portrayed as an angel of enlightenment, someone who held deep secrets about how nature works.
So again, this figure linked to light, knowledge, but also rebellion against authority. That definitely clicks with Faust.
It really does. And then you have the Persian god Mithra, another fascinating parallel.
Mithra, how so?
In the Mithraic mysteries, his big act is slaying the cosmic bull. This was seen as bringing light and life into the world, basically. Knowledge and order triumphing over chaos.
Okay.
Carl Jung was apparently fascinated by this. He saw it as a kind of precursor to the alchemical great work, which, as our source notes, heavily influenced Goethe's Faust.
Ah, the alchemy connection.
Yeah. And just like Faust's journey, Mithraic initiation wasn't random. It was structured. 7 degrees, each one a step towards enlightenment.
So a structured path. It wasn't just a mad grab for power, but sometimes envisioned as a process.
Exactly. A systematic unfolding of knowledge. Though it's interesting, our sources also point out some contrast.
Like what?
Well, in Hindu mythology, you have the churning of the ocean of milk. To get Amrita, the elixir of immortality, the gods and the demons actually had to work together.
Huh. Cooperation, not conflict.
Right? Suggests a different model where divine knowledge comes from integrating opposing forces. And then there's the Buddhist ideal of the bodhisattva.
The enlightened being who delays their own final enlightenment.
Exactly, to help others get there first. So that's another take on divine wisdom's selfless service, not individual.
Those Eastern traditions offer a really different perspective, don't they? Less about the lone individual storming the gates of heaven, more about connection or selflessness.
Absolutely, a good counter. Then, of course, there's Prometheus.
Stealing fire from the gods. Classic.
Right. And Carl Karenyi, as our material points out, saw that fire as more than just, technology. He saw it as symbolizing man thinking, using the torch of knowledge to light up the darkness. Goethe even dedicated his Prometheus poem to him, showing how strong he felt that connection.
But that gift of fire wasn't all good, was it? Aeschylus, in Prometheus Bound, he said it brought blind hopes too.
Exactly. Enlightenment mixed with delusion. It kind of mirrors the ambiguity of Mephistopheles' gifts to Faust, doesn't it?
It really does. And Prometheus' punishment. Chained to a rock, eagle eating his liver forever. That feels like a pretty potent metaphor for the potential agony of the knowledge seeker who goes too far.
A perpetual torment, yeah. And the Egyptian Book of Thoth, supposedly from around 1500 BCE, that's maybe even more direct.
The Book of Thoth?
Yeah, the story goes that Prince Neferpapta obsessively pursued this hidden book of wisdom, and it led to the deaths of his wife and child.
Wow.
And the book itself supposedly contained a warning. Whoever reads this will gain incredible knowledge, but they will never rest again in the world.
Chilling. That's almost the Faustian bargain right there. Knowledge at the price of peace.
It's a clear prototype. And that idea that some knowledge costs you your inner peace, it still resonates today, doesn't it? With information overload and everything.
Definitely. That sense that knowing too much can actually unsettle you, change your equilibrium.
Exactly. Though even in Egypt, there were variations. Thoth himself was often seen as more benevolent, a mediator of knowledge. And you have the myth of Isis tricking Ra into revealing his secret name to gain power.
So acquiring divine knowledge through cleverness, not necessarily a pact.
Right. Different paths, different approaches.
Okay, so if we pull all these ancient threads together, Gilgamesh, Lucifer, Mithra, Prometheus, Thoth, what are the common patterns that lead us towards Faust?
Well, you consistently see that drive, that quest for forbidden knowledge or power. You see the idea that there's almost always a price to pay for that kind of illumination.
Right, the cost.
And the figure who gives the knowledge, often ambiguous, right?
Yeah.
Not purely good or purely evil, Lightbringer, trickster, maybe both.
Yeah.
So it's this deep, persistent human desire to push past our limit, combined with the awareness of the potential danger, the consequences, that whole rich tapestry of ancient stories and anxieties. That's the ground the Faust legend grows out.
Okay, so we have this deep historical background, this ancient yearning. Now let's zoom in on the man himself, Johann Georg Faust. Who was this guy? What was his world like?
Right, the historical Faust. Our sources paint late 15th century Europe as this incredible turning point. The end of the medieval world, the very beginning of the modern era, a time of huge change.
And Faust steps onto that stage.
Exactly. This wandering scholar who kind of amazingly becomes both one of the last great medieval magicians and, you could argue, the first real tragic hero of the modern age.
Wow, that's quite a combination. What were the big forces shaping his time? It sounds like a real pressure cooker.
It really was. Our sources flag 3 huge things happening simultaneously. First, the Protestant Reformation just tearing up the old religious certainties. Second, this massive revival of ancient Hermetic and Neoplatonic texts. Suddenly, there's this huge new interest in magic, esoteric philosophy.
Right, the Renaissance magic we touched on.
Exactly. And third, you've got the very, very early days of the scientific revolution starting to bubble up, challenging how people understood the natural world.
So, religious upheaval, a magic revival, and the birth of science all at once. That's a wild mix.
Totally. And Faust emerges right into the middle of that charged atmosphere. It's the perfect backdrop for a figure like him.
So when do we actually first hear about him? What's the first solid proof?
The earliest definite mention is from 1507. It's a warning letter from an abbot, Johannes Trithemius.
A warning?
About what? About a certain Magister Georgius Sibyllicus, Faustus Jr., Fons Necromanticorum.
Fountain of Necromancy. That's quite a title.
Isn't it? And even the name he apparently gave himself is telling. Faustus Jr., he's deliberately linking himself to Simon Magus, the legendary sorcerer from the Bible.
Positioning himself.
Right. And Sibyllicus hints at ancient Roman mystery cult. So from the start, he's crafting this persona, placing himself in this long, slightly dodgy lineage of magicians.
But he wasn't just some random guy doing tricks. He was actively building his own legend.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Contemporary accounts say he made quite an impression when he showed up at German courts and universities.
How so?
Well, he apparently had this really commanding presence, and the claims he made were extraordinary.
Like what?
Oh, boasting about having a crystal ball made from the breath of dying men.
What?
Claiming he owned King Solomon's original magic tech, and even saying his magic would eventually surpass the miracles of Christ.
That is incredibly bold, borderline blasphemous for the time, surely.
Absolutely. But was he just a showman? Well, the record's a bit more complex.
Also,
University records from Heidelberg in 1509 actually list a Johannes Faust getting a bachelor's degree in theology.
Theology, yeah.
Yeah. So it suggests he had real academic training. He wasn't just some uneducated wanderer. He seems to have moved between conventional scholarship and these occult practices.
So he had a foot in both worlds.
Kind of. And you have to remember, universities back then were these melting pots: medieval scholasticism, new Renaissance humanism, Aristotle, Hermeticism, all rubbing shoulders. Faust seems like a product of that fertile, maybe contradictory environment.
Okay, so not just a charlatan. How did people react to him publicly?
His reputation grew through a mix of, well, public stunts and private consultations.
Stunts?
Our sources mention eyewitnesses in Würzburg claiming they saw him levitate during a philosophical debate.
Levitate. Seriously.
That's the claim. A weird mix of intellectual debate and magic show. And then in Nuremberg, the city council officially denied him entry. But privately, they were apparently interested in his offer to provide supernatural military intel.
Publicly denounce him, privately want his secrets. Classic.
Isn't it? It shows this real ambivalence. People were condemning him, but also kind of fascinated, maybe even hopeful he had something real to offer. This pattern followed him around.
That contradiction really speaks volumes about the anxieties of the time, doesn't it?
It really does. And then there's the discovery of what's believed to be his actual laboratory in Würzburg from the 1520s. That gives us physical clues.
The laboratory, what was in it?
A real mix. Astronomical instruments right next to ritual objects, scholarly books beside encrypted manuscripts.
Okay.
And interestingly, some geometric patterns found in the lab apparently match designs described in forbidden grimoires. It suggests a real practical attempt to blend science and magic.
So maybe he was genuinely trying to figure things out, even if his methods were unconventional. What did his contemporaries actually say about it?
Opinions were all over the map. You had Conrad Muschen writing in 1513, calling him a vagabond, braggart, and mountebank. But even he admitted Faust had made these remarkable claims, and some people believed him.
Okay, so skepticism, but acknowledgement.
Right. Then a physician, Philip Bogarty, condemned his methods, but also said he had remarkable gifts. And Martin Luther himself warned people about Faust, saying he'd made a pact with the devil.
Wow. Luther weighed in. So everything from dismissal to grudging respect to outright religious condemnation.
Pretty much the full spectrum, but maybe the most compelling stuff comes from Philip Melanchthon.
Luther's close associate, the respected scholar.
That's the one. Melanchthon claimed he actually met Faust.
Yeah.
And he detailed Faust's incredible boasts, promising to replicate Christ's miracles, guaranteeing military victories for the emperor through magic, claiming he had the secret to eternal life.
So the same huge claims, but now from a really credible source who says he heard them firsthand. What about Faust's end? How did this controversial life conclude?
Melanchthon's table talk, his recorded conversations, gives this really chilling account.
Yeah.
He describes Faust's death in Württemberg around 1540. Apparently, Faust was acting really strangely beforehand, even predicted a sword would cut off his head.
Creepy.
Then, after Melanchthon and others left the room, they heard this horrific struggle. When they went back in, they found Faust dead, his neck twisted impossibly, face contorted in terror.
Good grief, that sounds supernatural.
Exactly. Witnesses reported finding the body like that, and speculation just exploded. Was it the devil collecting his due? A magical experiment gone horribly horribly wrong, or something more mundane covered up. We'll never know for sure.
But that kind of death, it's tailor-made for legend, isn't it?
Absolutely. It wasn't a quiet end. It was dramatic, disturbing, and it became the catalyst. His death wasn't the end of the story. It was the start of his transformation into a myth. Stories about his demonic demise spread like wildfire, getting more fantastical with each telling.
So the historical man fades and the legend takes over. How did that happen? How did the story solidify?
Well, there were some key early written accounts that really shaped it. Johann Gast's Sermones Conviviales from 1548, for instance. He described Faust having this dog and horse that could change shapes.
Ah, the transforming animal.
Yeah, which kind of foreshadows Mephistopheles appearing as a poodle in Goethe's version, interestingly enough. And then there's a letter from a student in Wittenberg in 1575 talking about Faust offering to magically bring the ancient playwrights Plautus and Terence back to perform on stage.
So connecting magic and theater early on.
Right. These early bits and pieces start adding those characteristic fantastical elements. But the real game changer was in 1587.
What happened then?
The publication of the anonymous Historia von die Johann Fausten, the Faust book, usually attributed to the printer Johann Spies.
The Faust book. Okay, why was that so important?
Because it pulled everything together. It claimed to be based on Faust's own writings. Probably not true, but effective marketing.
Right.
And it brilliantly blended the known historical fragments, all the swirling rumors and elements from actual magical traditions into one coherent, compelling story. It tapped right into the anxieties of the late 16th century.
What kind of anxieties?
That tension between faith and the new push for knowledge. Medieval certainty versus modern doubt. Divine authority versus human ambition. The Faust book spoke directly to all of that.
So it wasn't just a story, it was reflecting the times. How did it portray Faust himself?
As this brilliant but deeply flawed tragic figure, his unstoppable desire for knowledge leads him to reject God and make this very formal pact with the devil to get it.
The pact.
Yeah.
Central element.
Absolutely. And the book details it with almost legal precision, reflecting the era's obsession with contracts, but it also throws in older folklore stuff. Faust conjuring historical figures, flying magically, summoning fancy food and wine.
So a mix of the contemporary legalistic stuff and older magical tropes. Did it catch on?
Like wildfire. It spread incredibly fast. Just a few years later, by 1592, Christopher Marlowe in England had already turned it into his famous play, The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus.
Marlowe's Faustus.
Huge.
Yeah.
And Marlowe shifted the focus a bit, really emphasizing the Renaissance humanist themes, the ambition, and the tragic consequences of putting human desire front and center.
So story was already evolving, taking on new meanings.
Constantly. Throughout the 17th century, it kept changing through puppet plays, cheap little chapbooks, oral storytelling. Each version reflected the culture telling it.
It's amazing how one historical figure could become such a flexible symbol.
It really is. Scholars like Mircea Eliade see the shaman trickster archetype, and Jeffrey Kripal talks about the superhuman imagination, that drive to transcend limits.
And what do other scholars say about this transformation from man to myth?
Well, Claude Lévi-Strauss argued that myths last because they encode fundamental human experiences. And Frank Barron's book, Dr. Faustus, From History to Legend, traces exactly that, how the historical guy got turned into this enduring symbol of humanity wanting to break boundaries. The magician became a...
Okay, so the legend is crystallizing, spreading, evolving. But to really grasp the world Faust came from in these early stories, we need to talk about those grimoires, right? Renaissance magic. What were these texts actually like?
Right, this is crucial context. While Faust was doing his thing, there was this sort of hidden revolution going on, rediscovering and translating ancient magical texts, the grimoires, mostly from Arabic into Latin.
Hidden revolution?
Yeah, because it wasn't mainstream, but it was hugely influential underground. And these grimoires, as our sources stress, weren't just books of spells. They were complex systems for understanding and theoretically manipulating nature's hidden force. The word grimoire itself comes from grammar, like a textbook of this hidden art.
So less like a witch's cookbook, more like a kind of alternative natural philosophy textbook.
Exactly. Take the Pick-a-Trick. Originally the Gayat al-Hakim, or Goal of the Wise, probably the most influential one.
What did it promise?
It claimed to teach you how to perform acts that seemed contrary to nature by understanding the links, the correspondences between the heavens, the superior world, and the earth, the inferior world. It was basically a detailed map of cosmic connections.
And Faust supposedly knew texts like the Key of Solomon and the Book of Abramelin. What were they about?
Those texts were fascinating mixtures. They blended Jewish Kabbalah, Arab astrology, Egyptian Hermetic ideas, even Christian angelology.
A real synthesis.
Totally. It fit right in with that whole Renaissance humanist project of recovering and combining ancient wisdom from everywhere. Frances Yates, in her book Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic Tradition, showed how this magical worldview created the climate for figures like Faust. The Renaissance Magus saw himself as someone decoding nature's secret, living in that blurry space between accepted knowledge and forbidden lore.
So it wasn't just about chanting spells. It was about understanding this interconnected cosmos and maybe influencing it.
Precisely. The Grimoire tradition was sophisticated. It had practical techniques, a philosophical basis, even a spiritual dimension.
Oh, so?
Well, the Picatrix, for example, gives instructions for capturing planetary influences. It wasn't simple. It required exact astronomical timing, using specific materials linked to the planet metals, herbs, whatever.
Okay.
And crucially, achieving a specific mental state. Perfect contemplation. This shows how, for them, the line between objective reality and subjective experience was much more fluid than we tend to think now.
And things like the Key of Solomon, those complex symbols and seals.
Not random doodles. The Key of Solomon presented a whole cosmology. Those pentacles and sigils were like mathematical diagrams of celestial relationship, often using Kabbalistic numerology. Drawing them wasn't just copying. It was seen as recreating the cosmic harmonies they were in miniature.
Like tapping into the universe's operating system through symbols.
That's a great way to put it. The alchemist Michael Mayer had that famous saying, "Nature rejoices in nature, nature contains nature, nature surmounts nature." It sums up the belief. Understand nature, contain its principles in your mind, and then maybe you can transcend its ordinary laws through knowledge and technique.
And those geometric patterns found in Faust's lab, matching Grimoire, maybe even hinting at things like electromagnetism. That's wild.
It is intriguing, isn't it? It suggests these Renaissance mages, working within their own framework, might have intuitively grasped certain natural principles that science later described differently.
Who provided the theory for all this?
Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's De Occulta Philosophia was huge. He laid out this three-tiered view of reality, elemental, celestial, intellectual, all interconnected. The magician's job was to understand the correspondences between these levels. That's the kind of thinking behind Faust claiming he could summon Alexander the Great.
So summoning Alexander wasn't necessarily about raising a ghost, but maybe accessing some kind of archetypal energy pattern existing on those different levels.
That's a key interpretation, yes. And the practical side of Renaissance magic often involved deliberately altering consciousness.
How?
Texts like the Book of Abramelin prescribed long purification periods, months of prayer, special diets, meditation to basically sharpen the magician's inner sense. The rituals themselves were often very sensory-specific colors, incenses, metals, timed to planetary hours, performed in specially constructed spaces with powerful incantations.
Sounds intense, almost like a system for inducing trance states or deep focus.
Very much so. And the discovery of psychoactive residues in Faust's lab, plus the grimoires often mentioning specific herbs or fumigation, it strongly suggests they might have used substances to help achieve these altered states. The extraordinary experiences they reported might have been partly chemically.
So the magic might not have always depended on literal spirits, but maybe on manipulating psychology, perception, the mind-body connection, with spirits acting as symbols for deeper forces.
That's a very sophisticated way to look at it, and probably closer to how many practitioners understood it. Thinkers like Giordano Bruno even argued magical effects happen through natural means, blurring the lines between magic and early science.
Right.
And interestingly, these grimoires often stressed careful observation, keeping detailed records, which kind of prefigures scientific method in a way.
Huh. Never thought of it like that.
And Faust's boast about recreating Plato's lost works. The underlying idea might have been that knowledge itself has a kind of substance, an energy that you could access and manifest with the right techniques.
And the pax that deals with spirits, not just signing on a dotted line with a demon.
Well, Renaissance magic often assumed consciousness, properly focused, could directly affect reality. Willpower was key. So a pact could be seen less as a literal contract, more as a psychological technique to focus the will and access deeper natural forces or parts of the psyche. That's why the magician's own state moral purity, mental focus, was considered so crucial for success. For these guys, there wasn't a sharp split between spiritual growth and studying nature. It was all one big quest for knowledge, both scientific and magical.
It paints a much more complex, intellectually serious picture than the usual pop culture image of wizards and spells.
Absolutely. It was a deep, challenging pursuit to understand and interact with the hidden workings of the cosmos and the mind.
Okay, so we have this rich backdrop of Renaissance magic. Now let's finally turn to the big one, Goethe's Faust. How did Goethe take all this material, the history, the legend, the magic, and transform it? And what about those esoteric interpretations?
Right. Goethe, as our sources rightly say, 1587 and the Spy's Faust book was a turning point. It cemented Faust as this haunting archetype.
The tragic figure, the pact?
Exactly. And that book, the Historia, it worked on so many levels. It was a warning, sure, but also a philosophical puzzle, and maybe even a coded grimoire itself. That tension, scary warning versus seductive possibility is part of why it was so popular.
And the pact in that book is described so meticulously, almost like a legal document.
Totally. That reflects the Protestant era's focus on contract. Blood signature, witnesses, specific terms. But even then, it mixes in older magic lore, drawing blood from the left hand's Mercury line, the timing under Saturn, the type of ink used.
It's that blend again, mundane and magical.
Constantly. Conjuring Alexander the Great with specific details, flying on a wine cask which echoes Mercury's symbolism of travel. It's layered.
So the Historia could be read different ways. A moral lesson, a meditation on knowledge, maybe even a secret guide for the occult-minded.
Precise. And it spread everywhere. It got translated quickly. It even tweaked the story of Faust's death, making it seem more ritualistic, like he had some terrible final insight.
Mythic transformation, as Alide called it. Concrete events becoming symbolic patterns.
Exactly. The Historia hit a nerve because it spoke to so many different hopes and verses.
And then centuries pass, and Goethe picks up the story. How does he change it?
Well, Marlowe had already focused on the tragedy, but Goethe turns it into this vast cosmic drama about human striving itself, das Streben.
Eternal striving.
Yeah. And Goethe knew his stuff. He'd studied alchemy, Hermeticism deeply, and that knowledge just permeates his version of Faust. It's not just window dressing.
So the argument is that Goethe's Faust isn't just a play, it's also an esoteric manual. Hidden symbolism.
That's a major interpretation, yes.
Yeah.
That beneath the surface story, there's a complex guide to spiritual trance, something that goes way beyond simple good versus...
Okay, intriguing. Where do we see that? Give me some examples.
Well, take the summoning of Mephistopheles setting, a crossroads at the Wolf's Hour, that's Saturn's time in occult lore, the magic circle Faust draws. Maybe not just protection, but a theater of memory, a map of the cosmos, linked perhaps to Venus's pentagram cycle and alchemy.
And Mephistopheles appearing in that colored smoke.
Right. That directly mirrors the stages of the alchemical grape. Negredo, black, leading through other colors to the rubedo, red, the philosopher's stone. Goethe knew Paracelsus, he knew Hermetic texts. These details aren't accidental.
What about the blood pact in Goethe's version? Still significant.
Absolutely. Esoteric readings focus on the left hand, Mercury line again, Mercury ruling magic, communication, life force. The black ink, ink of binding, connects to the Negredo stage. Even the name Mephistopheles.
Yeah.
Some scholars break it down, suggesting a hidden Hebrew link to the Key of Solomon, Mephites Shalom. Maybe Mephistopheles isn't just a demon, but a guardian of secrets, like the serpent in Eden prompting consciousness.
Wow. And his famous line, part of that force which would do evil constantly but always works the good.
That resonates hugely with esoteric ideas.
Right.
Like the Kabbalistic Qliphoth, the necessary dark shells that paradoxically allow divine light to manifest. The idea that darkness is needed for illumination is ancient.
So Faust's whole journey in Goethe could be seen as an initiation.
Exactly. Mapped onto the alchemical oak. Despair is the Negredo, the Pact is the Rubedo, meeting Helen of Troy is the Connutio, the sacred union. His final ascent is the albedo purification. Jung talks all about this in Mysterium Canute.
Are there even more hidden codes, specific formulas?
Some argue, yes, that the incantation Faust uses to summon Mephistopheles secretly contains a name of God, like in the Sefer Raziel, or that weird lines in the Walpurgis Night Scene actually map onto the Kabbalistic Tree of Life.
Even the 24-year duration of the pact.
Yeah, linked to Saturn's cycle and the 24 paths on the Tree of Life. Maybe it's an encoded map of consciousness moving through these stages, with Mephistopheles as the guide, the psychopomp.
And we mentioned the physical evidence, the labs, the residues, supporting the idea that people were actually trying these things.
Right. It wasn't just theory. Wagner trying to create the homunculus in Faust Part 2. That echoes real alchemical texts about artificial life, maybe involving astrology, maybe even early electrical devices. Even modern magicians still draw on Faustian symbols.
So in this esoteric reading, the bargain isn't just damnation. It's the great work, transforming consciousness.
It's that interpretation, yes. The soul isn't just lost. Maybe it represents the ego dissolving for enlightenment. Mephistopheles becomes the challenging initiator figure you need for transformation.
And Goethe himself had mystical experience.
He wrote about them. A vision of a dark stranger revealing nature's secret. It sounds very much like shamanic initiation and echoes parts of the Faust story itself. It suggests he wasn't just writing fiction, he was tapping into something.
So the real mystery of Goethe's Faust, maybe, is this cosmic drama of consciousness evolving through struggle, through opposition. The pact becomes necessary engagement with limits in order to transcend them.
That's the core of the esoteric interpretation. It turns the whole story inside out, from a morality tale into this profound allegory of psychological and spiritual development.
Which leads us beautifully into the psychological dimension. How does depth psychology help us unpack Faust's enduring power? Why does this myth still grab us?
Well, psychologically, that Faustian bargain is just fundamental, isn't it? That drive to sacrifice everything for something extraordinary. It reveals something core about us. We're always in this dance between aspiration and...
From Gilgamesh wanting immortality to us today, maybe with AI or genetic engineering.
Exactly. Pushing boundaries, often without fully weighing the cost, whether it's Faust's soul or our own peace of mind. Depth psychology gives us tools to see how this myth reflects patterns in ourselves, individually and collectively, especially now with technology offering immense power but also potential disaster.
So Faust becomes, like our sources say, an eternal mirror, reflecting our own inner conflicts.
Precisely. James Hillman talked about soul-making through engaging with symbols. Faust is a massive symbolic matrix for that.
And Jung's ideas fit here, too.
Definitely. His transcendent function, the psyche trying to bridge opposites, that's Faust in a nutshell, isn't it? Divine aims, diabolic means. Pursuing knowledge, risking the soul. The myth asks, are you brave enough to look in that mirror to face your own shadow?
Let's talk about those shadows. Jung's concept of autonomous complexes, those split-off parts of the psyche. How does that apply to Faust and Mephistopheles?
Our sources suggest the Faust myth is practically a textbook case of how complexes work. Mephistopheles isn't just external. He is Faust's repressed desires, his ambition, his shadow aspects, all bundled up into something that feels separate, almost alien, but is really part of him.
Like an inner demon.
Kind of. Clinically, complexes can act like a foreign body in the psyche. They resist being integrated. They can possess the ego. That's Faust's story, isn't it? He gets increasingly identified with Mephistopheles, becomes a shadow government of the ego. His high ideals get twisted into sensual gratification.
So the blood pact is like surrendering to the complex, letting it take the wheel.
That's a powerful psychological reading, yes. Complexes can be parasitic, draining energy, just like Mephistopheles seems to drain Faust. The pact symbolizes succumbing to that inner parasite.
And complexes resist being understood.
Right.
They're slippery.
Exact. That's reflected in Faust's inability to fully grasp what's happening to him, despite being brilliant. Mephistopheles keeps redirecting Faust's own power to serve the complex's agenda, not Faust's liberation. Faust puts all his skill at the service of his unconscious master.
Wow. Reading it that way makes the dynamic feel incredibly internal, almost disturbingly familiar. What about Jung's bigger picture archetypes, the collective unconscious?
Well, Jung believed that when we go through big psychological changes, these universal primordial patterns archetypes get activated. Faust is packed with them. Goethe said, there is strong shadow where there is much light.
Mephistopheles is the shadow archetype.
Clearly, the repository of everything Faust denies in himself. Edward Edinger talked about the ego-self axis and how Mephistopheles could even be seen as the other face of God, the dark, challenging aspect. Repress that, and you risk Faustian inflation, the ego getting way too big for its boots.
Another archetype, like the wise old man figure.
Yeah, appearing as Nostradamus or other guides. Marie-Louise von Franz called this the archetype of meaning. But it's often ambivalent, right? It offers wisdom, but can also keep you stuck, like the pure aeternus, the eternal youth she wrote about. It reflects the tricky nature of finding your own path of things. You need guidance, but ultimately you have to walk it yourself.
And Faust's whole journey, darkness, struggle, maybe redemption. How does that map onto Jung's idea of growth?
Jung saw alchemy as a metaphor for individuation, becoming whole. Faust's journey fits that pattern perfectly. The despair and pact, nigredo, blackening, encountering Helen, albedo, whitening purification, the final struggle towards integration, rubedo, red. It's the mystery of conjunction, integrating conscious and unconscious. Jeffrey Raff's work on the alchemical imagination explores this.
So this isn't just an old story. It's tapping into fundamental psychological process.
Absolutely. Contemporary Jungians like Marion Woodman connect the Faustian drive to our modern addiction to perfection, chasing transcendence through power, losing touch with our embodied selves. James Hollis writes about the middle passage, when our old rational maps fail us. Faust provides an archetypal paradigm, as Edward Casey put it, for understanding consciousness, knowledge, transformation, especially in our tech-driven world.
It's incredible how relevant it stays. So, stepping back one last time, what's the ultimate takeaway? What does Faust tell us about the eternal human quest itself?
Well, remember, the historical Faust emerged right at that pivot point. Medieval magic meets Renaissance reason. His big claims, his boasts. They echo what Stanley Tambia called the science of the concrete, understanding through symbols and direct experience. Claiming to outdo Christ's miracles, that's the shaman trickster pushing boundaries.
And Krupal's superhuman imagination, the drive to become more than human.
Exactly. Then the story evolved. The Faust book, rooted in Grimoires and maybe Rosicrucian ideas, Marlowe's tragic take on Hermetic ambition, finally Goethe spinning it into philosophical goal, drawing on the whole Western esoteric tradition, alchemy, Hermeticism, wrestling with modernity.
And those magical technologies, the Grimoires.
Sunyi called them exaltation literature, promising amazing potential. David Noble even saw them as an early religion of technology, trying to master nature through technique.
And the structure of the legend itself, the circle pack.
Henry Corbin's idea of hierophanic time fits where history and myth meet. The magic circle becomes Crowley's circle of art. The pack, Tausig's devil contract, it all forms an initiatory pattern.
How does that connect to us now?
Some sources link it to Byung-Chul Han's psychopolitics, how technology shapes us. Think about algorithms, genetic editing, VR. Aren't these modern forms of operative knowledge used for power, potentially reshaping consciousness itself?
A modern Faustian bargain, maybe.
Perhaps. Ultimately, Faust shows that eternal drive to transcend limits, what Levi-Strauss saw in The Science of the what Eliade called the myth of eternal return. We keep wrestling with these same core issues. Faust reveals the mind as this meaning-making machine, always seeking transcendence, needing those very limitations to push again, to grow.
So the story, in all its forms, is a mirror, reflecting our deepest struggles and aspirations.
Indeed. It's complex, enduring, that struggle between knowledge and morality, ambition and limits, the divine and the diabolic. It's all in there, as Mephistopheles says in Goethe. I am a part of the part that at first was all, part of the darkness that gave birth to the light. It sticks to matter and can't get free. Light flows from substance, makes it beautiful.
And Goethe is spending 60 years on his version. That itself mirrors the theme, doesn't it? Eternal striving, never quite satisfied.
Absolutely. Goethe himself said, "The march of intellect has even reached the devil." His Faust isn't just a morality play. It's this deep dive into consciousness itself, into Streben. It asks huge questions about knowledge, wisdom, power, responsibility, questions we're still asking.
And the pact becomes symbolic, an exchange for understanding, maybe, with Mephistopheles as that difficult guide through the psyche's shadows.
Right. All those layers, dark night of the soul, alchemy, anima integration, they're rooted in real human experience. Goethe makes Faust relatable because we see our own hopes and flaws.
And crucially, no easy answers in Goethe. It just makes you think about God, free will, the individual versus the collective. It almost anticipates depth psychology.
That depth plus Goethe's poetry is why it lasts, why it inspires so much art. In his hands, the legend becomes this timeless meditation on reflecting our hunger to know, our defiance of limit. As Goethe wrote, "We all walk in mystery. We are surrounded by an atmosphere about which we still know nothing at all."
So, engaging with Goethe's Faust, as we've tried to do here, it's more than just reading a book. It feels like a journey in itself. It needs courage, commitment to exploring the mind, the spirit.
It really does.
And maybe we end with that other Goethe quote. Man knows himself only insofar as he knows the world. Each new subject, well observed, opens up within us a new organ of thought. So for everyone listening, maybe take a moment. What new organ of thought has this deep dive into Faust opened up for you?